The Bentley rolled slowly down the quiet streets of Willowbrook, a small American town where everyone thought they knew each other's lives. The afternoon sun shone brightly, bouncing off the polished black paint of the expensive car. Inside, a man in a dark blue suit sat behind the wheel, his gold watch glinting each time he shifted the steering. His name was Gregory Holt. To most people, he was the dream every man wished to be: rich, respected, and well-dressed. But Gregory's smile was a lie, the kind of smile that hid more than it showed. In the back seat, holding a little teddy bear, was his only child, 7-year-old Liam. The boy's blonde hair caught the sunlight, and his green eyes were full of innocence. He didn't know why his father had picked him up from school early that day. All he knew was that Dad said they were going somewhere special. Liam adored his father. Every time Gregory came home with gifts, remote control cars, video games, fancy sneakers, the boy's face lit up. But what Liam didn't know was that every gift came with a shadow, a weight his father never let anyone see. Gregory wasn't just rich because of his successful real estate company in Chicago. His wealth had roots in something darker, something no one in Willowbrook could ever imagine. As they drove, Gregory glanced at Liam through the rear-view mirror. The boy was humming to himself, playing with the little bear's ribbon. It made Gregory's jaw tighten. He hated himself a little in that moment. Not because of what he was about to do, but because Liam trusted him so completely. "Dad," Liam asked, his voice sweet and curious. "Where are we going?" Gregory's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a small trip, buddy. You'll love it. There'll be fireworks." Liam grinned, clapping his small hands. "I love fireworks." The road stretched ahead, leading away from the neat rows of suburban houses into a more isolated part of town. The houses grew older, the lawns less tidy. They passed a few rusty gas stations and boarded-up shops. Liam didn't notice. He was too busy making the teddy bear talk in a squeaky voice. Gregory's phone rang. He pressed the Bluetooth button on the steering wheel. A deep male voice spoke on the other end. "Everything ready?" "Yes," Gregory replied. His voice was calm, but his fingers tapped against the steering wheel. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Liam looked up. "Who was that, Dad?" "Just a business friend," Gregory said quickly. But it wasn't business in the way Liam thought. For months now, Gregory had been meeting with a man named Victor Shaw, a man who promised him something beyond money. Victor wasn't a banker or an investor. He was something far more dangerous, wrapped in a tailored suit and an unsettling smile. Gregory had already given Victor many things: rare coins, antique watches, even a piece of land in Florida, but Victor kept saying it wasn't enough. The deal, the ritual, demanded something more, something personal, something alive. When Gregory first heard what Victor wanted, he'd laughed, thinking it was a sick joke. But as his financial empire began to crumble after a failed deal in Toronto, a lawsuit in London, and debts to dangerous people in New York, Gregory began to listen more closely. And now, here he was, driving his own son to a place no child should ever go. They reached the edge of town and turned onto a narrow, dirt road. The car bounced slightly over the uneven ground. Liam leaned forward, peering out the window. "Dad, why is it so quiet here?" Gregory forced a laugh. "It's peaceful, like a holiday." At the end of the dirt road stood an old farmhouse. Its paint was peeling, and the wooden porch sagged. A black SUV was parked out front. Leaning against it was Victor Shaw, wearing a gray suit and black sunglasses. Even from a distance, his presence was unsettling, too still, too controlled, as if he belonged in another world. Gregory parked and stepped out, his shoes crunching on the gravel. Liam followed, clutching his teddy bear. Victor smiled when he saw them. "Mr. Holt," he said smoothly. "And this must be young Liam." Liam looked up at Victor with polite curiosity. "Hello." Victor crouched down, his sunglasses reflecting the boy's innocent face. "Hello, Liam. Do you like stories?" Liam nodded shyly. "Well," Victor said, straightening up, "today, you're going to be part of a very special story." Gregory's stomach tightened. Inside the farmhouse, the air was cool and smelled faintly of incense. Heavy curtains blocked out most of the sunlight. The furniture was old but well kept, and a large wooden table stood in the center of the main room. On it were strange objects, candles, bowls, and something covered with a red cloth. Liam's eyes widened. Is this for the fireworks? Gregory's mouth was dry. He crouched down to his son's level. Buddy, I need you to be brave today.
Can you do that for me?
Liam nodded eagerly, still believing this was some kind of game. Victor closed the door behind them. The sound echoed in the dim room. Gregory felt a rush of heat in his chest, followed by a deep, cold fear. For the first time, he wondered if he could go through with it. But then he remembered the debts, the threats, the promises Victor had made, wealth beyond imagining, properties in Sydney, Manila, and Bali, and enough power to never be vulnerable again. Victor's voice was smooth as silk. Shall we begin? Gregory looked at Liam at those trusting green eyes, and something inside him twisted. But he nodded anyway. The candles flickered. The red cloth was pulled away. And that was the moment Gregory realized there would be no turning back. The days after Ethan's sickness were unlike anything Lily had seen before. Her father, Richard, returned home looking healthier than ever, but not in a normal way. His eyes seemed sharper, his steps quicker, and his smile colder. At first, she tried to convince herself that maybe it was just her imagination. Maybe she was just overthinking because she still had that weird feeling about what happened in the doctor's room. But soon, things began to feel off. Richard started spending more time in his study with the door locked. The old grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to tick louder whenever he was inside, almost like the whole house was holding its breath. Sometimes, Lily would pass by and hear whispers, strange, low voices, not quite English, not quite any language she recognized. Once, she caught a glimpse of the study through a slightly open door. There were candles lit on his desk, and he was sitting in front of a small box, his eyes fixed on something inside it. When Lily's shadow crossed the doorway, Richard slammed the box shut and barked, "Go to bed." That night, Lily lay in her room, listening to Ethan's breathing. He was asleep, his small chest rising and falling, but she noticed something unusual. He was paler than usual. His lips looked slightly dry, and even though it wasn't cold, his little hands felt cold to the touch. Maybe he's still recovering from being sick, Lily whispered to herself. But deep inside, the unease grew stronger. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan didn't seem to get better. In fact, he seemed more tired. He barely ran around the house anymore. He would sit in the living room with his toy cars, moving them slowly instead of zooming them around like before. "Mom," Lily finally asked one evening while Sarah was making tea, "don't you think Ethan looks different?" Sarah glanced over at the boy, who was slumped on the couch watching cartoons. "He's just tired. Kids go through phases." "But he's always tired now," Lily insisted. "And he doesn't eat much anymore." Sarah sighed. "I've noticed. But your father says the doctor checked him and everything's fine." Lily's eyes narrowed. "That doctor's weird. I don't trust him." Sarah gave her a warning look. "Your father trusts him. Don't start causing trouble." Lily dropped the conversation, but the worry in her heart refused to leave. One night, something happened that made her blood run cold. Lily had gotten up to get a glass of water and was walking past Ethan's room when she saw a faint glow coming from inside. She peeked in and froze. Richard was standing over Ethan's bed. He wasn't touching him, but his hands hovered above Ethan's chest, and his lips moved silently. That strange whispering language was back, and the air in the room felt heavy, almost like it was pressing on Lily's shoulders. Ethan didn't wake up. He just lay there, his face pale in the dim light, as if he was lost in some deep, dreamless sleep.
"Dad."
Lily's voice cracked. Richard's head snapped toward her. His eyes gleamed strangely in the glow. "Go back to bed, Lily." She opened her mouth to say something else, but he stepped toward her. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that made her heart race.
"Now."
As she obeyed, her legs trembling all the way back to her room. The next morning, Ethan was even weaker. He barely touched his breakfast. Lily watched him, her stomach twisting. She wanted to tell her mother, but Sarah seemed so distant lately. almost like she didn't notice anything strange anymore. It wasn't just Sarah. People in town had begun treating Richard differently. Men in expensive suits came to visit. They shook his hand with a kind of respect Lily had never seen before. Some even bowed slightly when leaving the house. Once, she overheard one of them say, "The offering was accepted. You'll see results soon." An offering. The word kept echoing in her head. She began to piece things together, her mind darting between fear and disbelief. Could it be possible? Could her father? The idea was too terrible to finish. But she couldn't ignore the signs anymore. Ethan wasn't just sick, something was being taken from him. And whatever it was, her father was involved. She had to find out the truth. The day after Daniel's accident at school, the mansion felt heavier than usual. Even the air seemed thick, as though it carried secrets that didn't want to be spoken aloud. Sarah, his mother, moved through the halls with quiet, deliberate steps, glancing over her shoulder as if someone might be listening. Daniel sat in his room, his small body wrapped in a blanket. He stared at the closed window, his little hands fidgeting with the loose threads of the fabric. He couldn't shake the feeling of fear from last night, the strange chanting, the muffled voices, and his father's cold gaze. When Sarah came in with a tray of warm soup, Daniel's eyes flicked to the door, making sure it was shut. She sat beside him and ran her fingers through his soft hair. "How's my little man feeling today?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Better," Daniel whispered, though it wasn't true. His voice was low, as if he was afraid the walls might hear him. Sarah placed the soup in front of him, but Daniel didn't touch it. Instead, he looked at her, his big blue eyes glistening. "Mom, why was Dad in my room last night?" Sarah froze. The question made her heart thump in her chest. She wanted to tell him everything, but fear for his safety chained her tongue. She forced another smile. "Your father was just checking on you. You had a small cut on your arm from school." Daniel frowned. "But he wasn't talking to me. He was saying things I couldn't understand." Her stomach tightened. She knew exactly what he was talking about. She had heard that same chanting before, once in the dead of night, from her husband's study. She had brushed it off, convincing herself it was some strange business practice. But deep down, she knew it was something darker. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "don't think too much about it. You need to rest." She reached out and held his hand, squeezing it gently. But Daniel didn't let it go. "Mom, I had a dream there was a big shadow, and it was trying to take me away. And Dad was standing there, letting it happen." Sarah's lips trembled. She wanted to tell him it was just a nightmare, but his trembling hands told her otherwise. "You're safe now," she whispered, though her voice didn't sound convincing even to herself. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She waited until her husband, Richard, went to bed, then crept quietly down the hall to his study. The door was locked as always, but Sarah had stolen a small key from his drawer earlier that day. Her hands shook as she slid it into the keyhole and turned it. Inside, the room smelled faintly of incense and something else, something metallic, like old blood. The walls were lined with books in languages she didn't understand, their covers decorated with strange symbols. On the large oak desk lay a thick leather-bound notebook. She flipped it open, and her breath caught. Inside were detailed notes, rituals, chants, diagrams of strange circles, and drawings of a small child. The child looked exactly like Daniel. Her hand covered her mouth to keep from screaming. She turned the page and found something worse, a list of dates. The last one was circled in red. It was only 3 days from now. Beside it was a single word: offering. A noise made her spin around. Richard was standing in the doorway, his tall frame blocking the light from the hall. His eyes were cold, calculating. "What are you doing here, Sarah?" he asked, his voice calm but dangerous. Sarah's heart pounded so loudly she thought he could hear it. She closed the book and stepped back, trying to steady her voice. "I was looking for the financial documents you mentioned." Richard stepped forward slowly, each step deliberate. "You've been curious lately," he said. "Too curious." She tried to act casual, but her hands were trembling. "I just want to understand our life better." He studied her for a long moment, then smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Some things are better left unknown, my dear. Curiosity can be dangerous. When he left, Sarah collapsed into the chair, her hands gripping the book tightly. She knew she couldn't confront him directly.
Not yet.
She had to protect Daniel. And if that date in the notebook meant what she thought it did, she didn't have much time. That night, she went into Daniel's room and held him close while he slept. Her tears soaked into his hair as she whispered, "I won't let him hurt you. I promise." But deep down, she knew that to keep that promise, she might have to risk everything: her home, her safety, and even her life. The clock was ticking. 3 days. And Richard was already watching her. The officers quickly placed Marcus in handcuffs. His expression was a mix of anger and defeat. He opened his mouth to speak, but Detective Hughes silenced him. "You have the right to remain silent. And for your sake, I'd use it," Hughes said, his voice sharp. Linda, now in tears, was comforted by Mrs. Taylor. Even little Oliver, though unaware of the full situation, clung to her like a lifeline. The neighbors peeked from their windows, watching the scene unfold. Some whispered, others filmed, but all knew this was something their town would talk about for years. As Marcus was led to the police car, he tried to twist the narrative. "This is a misunderstanding. I'd never hurt my boy," he shouted. But Officer Miller, who had seen too many desperate criminals try the same tactic, didn't slow his steps. "Save it for court." Linda followed the officers to the station, determined to give her full statement. She explained how she had discovered the shrine, the late-night phone calls, and Marcus's sudden interest in strange business deals. By the time the interrogation began, the police already had enough evidence to hold him thanks to the video from Linda's phone and the witness testimony from Mrs. Taylor. When Detective Hughes entered the interrogation room, Marcus was sitting with his arms crossed, looking like a cornered wolf. "Marcus," Hughes began, "we have your wife's testimony, a witness, and physical evidence. We also have records of your calls to a known occult practitioner in the Philippines. Now, you can either cooperate and tell us who you're working with, or you can spend the rest of your life in prison." Marcus hesitated, then looked up with cold eyes. "You think you're saving my boy? You're wrong. There's a debt on my head bigger than anything you can imagine. Without that ritual, I'm as good as dead." Hughes leaned forward. "Better you than your child." The silence that followed was heavy. Marcus knew he had lost. Meanwhile, Linda sat in the waiting room, holding Oliver tightly. Her heart was heavy, but she felt a strange relief, like a dark shadow had been lifted from their lives. She knew it wouldn't be easy from here. There would be court hearings, maybe even threats from whoever Marcus owed money to. But she also knew she would never let anyone put her son in danger again. That night, when they finally got home, Linda tucked Oliver into bed. He looked up at her with innocent eyes and asked, "Mommy, why was Daddy so angry?" Linda smiled sadly, brushing his hair back. "Some people forget what really matters, baby. But Mommy never will." Outside, the street was quiet again. The whispers had faded, the blue lights gone. But in the hearts of Linda and Oliver, the scars of what almost happened would never fully fade. And somewhere, in a cold police cell, Marcus sat alone, realizing too late that he had traded the only thing that truly mattered for greed. The story of Marcus Holloway would be remembered not for his wealth or his success, but for the darkness he let into his home, and for the strength of a mother who refused to let it win. The sky was covered with heavy clouds, the kind that looked like they carried both rain and secrets. A cold wind brushed through the trees, making them sway as if they were whispering warnings. Inside the hospital, a slow, uneasy silence spread through the corridors. It had been weeks since the night Daniel discovered the truth about his father, and though the police had taken Richard away, the shadow of his deeds still lingered like a bad smell in their lives. Liam lay in bed, his body growing stronger each day. His cheeks had regained some color, but his eyes still held the echoes of fear. Sometimes he woke up in the middle of the night crying, clinging to his mother, afraid that someone might take him again. Emily stayed by his side every night, determined never to let her son out of her sight. Daniel, however, had been restless. He visited them daily, bringing food, flowers, and toys for Liam, but there was something different about him now. His smile was softer, almost apologetic. It was as if he carried a weight in his chest, the guilt of having been blind to his father's true nature for so long. One afternoon, while Emily was helping Liam eat, Daniel walked in quietly. His suit was wrinkled, his tie undone. He looked like he hadn't slept properly in days. "Emily," he said gently, "can we talk outside for a moment?" She looked at Liam, then back at him. "If it's about the investigation, you can say it here. I don't want to hide anything from Liam anymore." Daniel shook his head. "It's not about the police. It's personal." Reluctantly, Emily stepped into the hallway with him. The air was heavy between them. "I want to take care of Liam," Daniel began, his voice trembling slightly. "Not just because I'm his uncle, but because I feel like I owe him a life. A good life. My father took so much from both of you, and I can't change what happened, but I can make sure Liam never suffers again." Emily's eyes softened, but also filled with uncertainty. "Daniel, I appreciate what you're saying, but my trust, it's broken. I can't just hand my son over to anyone, even if they mean well." "I don't want to take him away from you," Daniel said quickly. "I just want to be in his life, really be there. School fees, medical care, college, whatever he needs. I'll make sure he gets it. You won't owe me a thing." Emily studied his face for a long moment. She saw no arrogance there, only sincerity and regret. Finally, she nodded. "If Liam wants you in his life, I won't stop you." They went back into the room, and Daniel knelt beside Liam's bed. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "How would you like it if we spent more time together? We could go to the park, play video games, maybe even take a trip someday." Liam tilted his head. "Will there be ice cream?" Daniel chuckled, his eyes misting over. "As much as you want." From that day forward, Daniel kept his promise. He became a constant in Liam's life, a safe presence, not just a name on a card during holidays. He drove them to school, sat through Liam's school plays, and even learned how to make spaghetti the way Liam liked it. Months passed, and slowly, the scars of the past began to fade. Richard remained behind bars, his trial drawing attention from media outlets who labeled him the greedy father. The story shook the community, but for Emily and Liam, the focus was on healing, not headlines. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset from the porch of Emily's small home, Liam leaned against his mother. "Mom," he said, "do you think Grandpa ever loved me?" Emily's throat tightened. She looked at the horizon, then back at her son. "Love isn't about what people say, Liam. It's about what they do. And no, I don't think he understood love the way we do. But that's okay. You have me. You have Uncle Daniel. And we love you enough for 100 grandpas." Liam smiled faintly, and Daniel, who sat nearby, reached over to ruffle his hair. "You're stuck with us forever, kiddo." The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. For the first time in months, Emily felt a quiet sense of peace settle over her. The darkness that had once threatened to swallow them had passed. Life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was enough. And as the first evening star appeared in the sky, Emily knew one thing for certain. Evil might have touched their lives, but it had not won. Love had. The Yendi.